Well, good morning, everybody. My name is John Nacy. I'll be your moderator for the first two panels today. And the first panel that we're going to go through today is really built on an executive perspective on how do we define value in the connected enterprise, how do we justify the journey, and what do we expect to get out of it. So we're going to spend the next hour or so kind of going through some journeys of some of our favorite customers here. So I'm going to briefly introduce, to my right, Jim Wetzel, Director of Technology at General Mills. Jim also happens to be the chairman of the Smart Manufacturing Leadership Coalition, and we'll spend a little bit of time on that in just a few minutes. Lance Whitacre, the Chief Information Officer of Andersen Windows. We have Art Clausen, Chief Financial Officer of Mullins Foods. And finally, Keith. And so to kick things off, I thought maybe we'd start off with a little bit of a framing here. You know, when we look at the connected enterprise, we see a lot of opportunity in front of companies and manufacturers today. Keith just illustrated the fact that by combining OT and IT technologies with a very strong set of partners, many companies can realize a lot of value that they don't see today. And many companies struggle with that because from previous surveys we've done, we know that many companies have yet to integrate their information platforms tightly together with their machinery, that they have stranded assets out there, and they're not taking advantage of contextualized information that lies within their operations already. So we've heard Keith talk about the advancements in technologies and moving the architecture forward. We've talked a bit about the impact of new technologies and the benefits that they're going to bring to the connected enterprise strategies that companies want to deploy. We have some instances of that here, but first I'd just ask Keith maybe to kind of give a personal perspective on the Rockwell journey, because this is something we've been on for a number of years, right, Keith? And in your mind, 8-10 years ago, you had come to a realization that Rockwell needed some change. And I think the readership would kind of want to know, what is the executive mind share around, what is the impetus for change and understanding that this could be a long journey of continuous improvement? What were you thinking?
Well, I was thinking it probably wasn't going to take as long as it did at the start, but I think the operative word is journey, and it's continuous improvement, quite frankly. But the foundation of this for us was the burning platform that we needed to change our ERP systems, and I use the word systems because it wasn't one. It was many. Some pieces of it were home brewed, others were part of acquisitions. And it was clear that the only way we would globalize as a company was to simplify that infrastructure and be able to change and re-footprint our entire supply chain, including the building of manufacturing on a worldwide basis. And as we were trying to globalize as a company to a much stronger degree, we had to make sure our infrastructure and capabilities were also in that framework. And so it started with the recognition of needing to change our ERP system, what we called global process transformation, the global supply chain restructuring. We had 20 plants around the world that we needed, whether it was, and we had 3 different types of manufacturing. It was build to stock, build to configure to order, and engineered to order. And those can take days or months through the cycle. So the need to increase our visibility of what was happening on a global basis was critical for our long-term success and, quite frankly, financial prosperity. And that's was pretty much the background as to what we undertook. And what we found out real quick is, as we were putting in the ERP system and standardizing on that, we didn't have one standard way that we ran the plants. So the outcome of that was we needed to put in a factory talk production center to be able to create a common way of collecting data around our different facilities, and then using that data to develop best practices across our organization. And that's basically where we're at today, is the development of those best practices, We have centralized strategies with distributed execution. But we do have visibility of our entire supply chain. We have visibility of our entire production process. And we can support customers anywhere in the world, but also we can move what we're doing to support any customer based upon the demands and the opportunities that we have in our manufacturing plants today to be able to rebalance at any time. And one of the great examples we had was when we had the tsunami in Japan. We knew exactly what products, what components were being produced in that area, and we were able to redirect our supply chain overnight in that area. So when you talk about enterprise risk management, that really drove home what our operations team was able to accomplish in this transition.
Keith, you mentioned a few things that were touching close to home. We're not a global company. We're a mid-sized company. We don't have plants around the world to deal with, but we still have some similar issues that we had to deal with. Going into this initial venture, this journey, as you call it, we knew where our weaknesses were. We knew what we needed to address, and that's how we started this process. So what we found as we got into a design mode was there were a few other things we didn't know. And that extended to actual phased implementation where we discovered there was a whole world that we didn't know. We have an ERP system, one, but it wasn't being utilized commonly across the entire organization. In fact, in some places it wasn't being utilized at all. We knew we had real-time issues regarding data. We knew we needed control systems to standardize our production platforms. And we knew that we had a wonderful warehouse management system that ended at the point of production and picked up again at the back end of production, but we lost our control in that way. We knew that we had manual data feeds in and out of our ERP systems that were burdensome and often troubling in terms of accurate information and consistency. Those are the initial things that we wanted to address with the implementation, and by and large have been quite successful with that. What we didn't know was what we didn't know, and that is going to be a long journey for us as well.
So what I'm kind of hearing you frame up, Art, is you've begun the journey towards a smart manufacturing environment, higher levels of flexibility, better supply chain recovery processes. And I know, Jim, you've worked on this quite a bit at General Mills for probably 20 years or more.
Yep.
So I thought maybe it'd be a good idea to maybe talk a little bit about some of the work you've done, not only in General Mills, but with the Smart Manufacturing Leadership Coalition around the concept of smart manufacturing, a demand-driven process where we're optimizing within the plant floor, but also attaining deeper levels of visibility with the supply chain and vendors, and ultimately driving a safer and more sustainable production process. So maybe you could kind of give us a little bit of background on your work with General Mills, and then we'll transition into smart leadership.
Sure, love to. At General Mills, our journey was very similar to, Keith, what you talked about at Rockwell. Our journey started in 1993. So is this overnight? No, I think it's 2015 today. So it's been a while. We now are collecting over 700 billion data points a day across our global enterprise. But to get on this journey, you kind of think about, did we have this strategy back in 1993 that in 2015 it looked like it does today? Absolutely not. We weren't quite that smart. So we started out and we basically said, we need to be connected. So I very much liked your presentation this morning, Keith. I thought it was spot on. This topic of being connected for us started at the PLC level, and we said, let's just buy every PLC with Ethernet capability. Back in '93, it wasn't an open structure. It was, Rockwell's flavor, but that's all grown. And we started connecting stuff. And the whole idea was, what's the value equation out of this if you connect stuff? We were trying to just get trends of the attributes and the parameters in our factory, so that when something happens, we could go in and study why it happened, and we could investigate, and we'd have everything trended. And you think back in the 80s, as an example, what was happening in the 80s? We had paper strip chart recorders. So in the 90s, moving to make it digital was quite an advancement, right? So we did all that, and then we said, you know, we're trying to just get visualization. And then we realized visualization isn't where it's at. We really have to start optimizing and really getting to manufacturing enterprise analytics and MES technologies. And so we put our MES technology in 1995, and we've deployed that across the globe. And then in the late 1990s, we added enterprise analytics to it. And now we're on this journey of smart manufacturing. And the reason that we're on this journey of smart manufacturing is if you take a look at what's transpired in the last 20 years, clearly the technology has been awesome. It has dramatically transformed our capabilities to do things more easily. But I have a slide that I've used in a number of different forms. I use it internally, and I call it my General Mills ecosystem of stuff. And what it is it shows all of the fragile one-off applications and databases and architectures that are needed to deliver business value that is providing solutions. So connected data is part of that. We probably spend 50 to 60% of our energy working on connected data. But the rest of the story is I'm building applications on top of that connected data to do something. And those applications are unique. And so when you have this ecosystem of stuff that let's say is driving sustainability, or it's driving optimization, or it's driving demand-driven supply chain, or any of those things that you want to do to drive business value, you end up behind the scenes with a large support staff, IT, OT issues. Is the data right? You know, one version of the truth. And so I got real interested in saying, how can we do this differently? And so back in about 2009, Rockwell also was at the table, showing again, exercising their thought leadership in this. A group of leaders got together and we started talking together about this, and this word smart manufacturing came up. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea there was, how can no single vendor can solve this problem? We have to collaborate and work together. So you saw a slide Keith showed up, was awesome, was about the collaboration that's happening, and he used the words that, you know, no one company can be the best at everything. That's true not only as a manufacturer, it's also true, I think, as technology providers. And how well we work together, and how we can have open systems, and how we can essentially weave together this smart manufacturing grid or network is what I had a lot of energy for. And so we're on that mission. We're trying to figure out how we can have open collaborative systems, how we can knit them together so that myself as a practitioner, as someone that's running manufacturing, that it's not my job to create the knitting. And it's not my job to do all the seaming and sewing that's needed to connect this stuff. So if we can keep stuff simple, if we can keep stuff robust and secure, and we can do that in, I like Keith's word, he used future-proof. If we can do that in a future-proof way so I don't have to continue investing on my core architecture, I think that's our shared vision in this smart manufacturing ecosystem.
So that gets to the heart of the Smart Manufacturing Leadership Coalition, which is more or less a public-private partnership. So at the table with other vendors like Rockwell and partners and collaborators, you also have academics, you have some government agencies, and you're trying to establish standards and use cases that we could roll out across the board, correct?
Right. It's a potpourri of everyone, right? So we've got academics, we've got government, we've got industry, we've got technology providers. And just like we said at the beginning, is that we don't know exactly where this is going to end. We're not going to design the end game when we start, because then we'd never get out of the blocks. The whole idea there is to take industry-based test cases, much like Keith showed up today. And you'd say, how would I solve those in a differential way? How would I solve those? Bringing partners together to create open technologies to make that happen, and to be an order of magnitude difference in the cost deployment, in the security strategies, and really be frame breaking. And especially a targeted audience really is the small and medium-sized business that doesn't have the resources of a large company like ourselves. And so how do you make that happen? And the United States government is looking at, right now the Department of Energy has a request for proposals for groups to come forward and craft proposals of how they would build out this institute, this Smart Manufacturing Institute of a public and private relationship to actually create this dream.
Okay, so this sounds very similar to Industry 4.0 in concept. Have you looked deeply at, and I guess I could point to other countries as well. I know Korea, China, France, other countries have all created smart manufacturing initiatives, which I call sovereign initiatives, really built around, how do we reinstitute or reinforce our manufacturing base and make manufacturing stronger? And smart manufacturing technology and investment is the way to do that, right?
Yep.
Have you looked at what some of the other groups are doing as well and compared, where they want to go with where your team is going at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. And Industry 4.0, digital manufacturing, smart manufacturing, to some extent, it's all the same thing. I mean, it is, we're playing in the same space, we're trying to be connected, we're trying to optimize manufacturing. Probably the differentiator is that on a smart manufacturing perspective, we're looking from end to end, we're looking at optimization, we're looking at techniques that will really dramatically improve the productivity of your enterprise. Not just of a cell, not just of a line, but at an enterprise level that would include your partners that you work with. So how do you do field to fork kind of thing, end to end, from ingredient to consumer, and knit that together when your network, your topology is not extendable to all people in the world. And so the concept of having an open manufacturing platform, or to some extent you might use simple terms like the internet for manufacturing. A number of people have used that before. Where does that exist, and how do you make that capable?
Pretty ambitious goals, and I know some of this results in us working with standards organizations to try to reinforce common data models, common technologies, and investments in specific technologies. And I know we've been working with our partners in certain consortiums and coalitions to move that forward, along with the smart manufacturing leadership team. But it's one of these things that everywhere I go, every customer I talk to has heard about either smart manufacturing or Industry 4.0, and the first question in their minds is, how do I get started, and how real is this, and how soon will I see it happen?
Yep.
So how would you respond to that?
Well, there are a number of ways you can get started. First, you could join our coalition. That's a pitch part. But you can do what Keith started the presentation about today. You need information. So the whole idea, and part of our General Mills journey was to go from opinion-driven to data-driven and facts-driven for decision-making. Part of our journey was about really trying to have decisions made at the speed of business, not the speed of the computer system. And so as you try to translate that stuff, it all starts with trying to figure out where is all this data source, what do you need to have, understand your business process, and so everyone can start there. You don't have to worry about, let's wait until the end has been decided. You need to start now, because it's going to take a while to do all this work.
Is it, I guess I could ask, I guess you kind of already made the point, Art. You start out without really knowing where the end is, and you find out along the way.
Yeah, we thought we knew.
Yeah, you think so?
Out that as we got into various layers of this journey, the potential value points continue to grow and grow and grow, and still do. Again, my point, we didn't know what we didn't know, and to realize that puts a whole different bent on how you look at your organization, how your organization works or doesn't work well, and how you're going to make changes. That leads you into some non-technological issues with regards to culture, employees, training, leadership, and how you're going to utilize this information in a way that's productive, but that can be digested. And that's part of the timeline on this. is you can only bite off and chew and digest so much at a time. It is a long-term journey. You can't switch gears on 10, 20, 30 or more years of culture and process overnight. And that's probably one of the biggest issues that we're dealing with now in the early stages of this implementation.
I'd just like to add on to that. As we were talking the other night, probably the biggest thing that I've seen at General Mills is this is about leadership. So yes, there's a technology component, and yes, you need to have integrated data, and yes, this stuff has to be one version of the truth. But if no one's looking at it, if no one's acting on it, because you don't have a culture set up for that, you don't have processes set up for that, you'll have invested a lot and not gotten a lot of return.
Right.
And so our largest challenge, even though we had a lot of technical challenges over the last 20 years, don't get that out of it, but we've had a lot of technical challenges, but the leadership piece to say we're moving from opinion-driven, we're going to reward the hero to come in and solve the problem, versus we're going to be fact-driven, and we're going to trust our facts, and we're going to get more information, and we're going to understand how things work, and we're going to really leverage our folks to know how stuff really works, has been a huge impact. And so I'd say leadership and culture are just as important as any technology.
You know, I guess, Keith, I'm going to come back to you for a minute. I mean, there is this issue of organizational readiness that you had to tackle. And I know when we brought Marty Thomas on, we had nothing like a central organization focused on processes. Can you elaborate a little bit on how we got started with that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it was once again, the natural evolution. You hear everyone talking about it. You start out with some dimension, and then all of a sudden you understand, whoops, we got to go work here too. And certainly it was one thing to say that we would have a single ERP system, but all of the processes involved in that had to also become standardized, and that goes to what people were just talking about here, which is it's about leadership, it's about change management, it's about culture change, but it's about people doing their jobs differently. Mm-hmm. And that's hard. I mean, it was great, your comment, heroes. We had lots of heroes because they had to fill in the voids in our systems. And they did heroic work, quite frankly. And the salespeople all had their internal heroes that they could call to work through the discontinuities of our processes. But when you put in a very rigorous, process-driven system, people's jobs change, and what they need to know changes. And so we definitely had to evolve the organization and develop an organization that understood their job was to use the tools, use the facts, use the data, but make decisions then based upon that, and not have to go out and check it out either on the floor or call their person and get the real information on when it's going to ship, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Trust the system, but now your job is a lot different. And so we had Marty and his team had not just re-footprint the manufacturing and the supply chain, but also develop the team to be able to run the new processes, the new systems, and to utilize the information in ways that was never used before because we couldn't do it before. So there was no requirement for our people to understand how or what was important in these new systems. And so that was probably the bigger part of learning how to run a business with a different system, which means there's different requirements, different competencies, different capabilities, different skills, and quite frankly, different outcomes that you should now be expecting from the performance of the business, but the performance of individuals as well. And that was a huge, huge change for our company.
And so that difference in performance kind of becomes also basically a profit mechanism of sorts to kind of reinforce further investment. Is that kind of how Art, your team did it? And Lance, I'm going to turn to you and look at your business also, but The way I kind of perceive it is you go into this directionally headed down a certain vector, and at some point you got to prove you can make enough progress to continue the investment, continue the journey, right?
Well, being the finance guy, I'm in a bunch of company here that probably doesn't relate to my world on a day-to-day basis, nor I to theirs in some regard. But finance led this project, so typically we're looked at as a roadblock to these type of systems. Where's my ROI, and I need to make sure the numbers are hard. But it's been a wonderful journey in that we had established some traditional ROI calculations and basically achieved those, but that was just the tip, and we didn't realize that until we got into it. So how does this migrate then to additional investment? Well, we're 3 years into our journey, so I've got 17 plus years to go before I get to Jim's level. But the results are there for the taking. We are now focusing more on the leadership and the cultural issues to maximize what we already have before taking on to the next step. But there are many, many next steps that can add value to us, and we can now demonstrate that. And that's based on what we now know that we didn't know before. To Keith's point, you have your heroes, I call them your rock stars. These are people in your organization who are extraordinarily valuable because of what they can fix. How much value do they give if it doesn't break? They have to reinvent themselves. They have to now look at their job and their role differently. That's very difficult for people who have spent sometimes decades cultivating their position, their departments. And I sympathize with that, but that is a major, major hurdle that we have. So we have to digest and maximize what we have right now. Hopefully that won't take too long. Hopefully it won't take 17 years. But it's something that we need to see some additional application results that we can actually do this. That falls on leadership.
Are you also finding that there's a skills gap within that organizational structure, that the hero or the rock star that used to be really good at filling a gap somewhere really doesn't have the skills or the technology depth or the analytic skills to work with the newfound data that we've been giving them? Lance?
I know in some occasions we do see a skills gap, and what we move from is more administrative to more of an analytical capability. And so I think about things like our production scheduling area, where we've changed the way we do production scheduling, leveraging technology. And it's allowing our team to be more effective. And we've seen very tangible results, maybe to kind of tie back to your other question as well. When we've implemented some of the Rockwell solutions, we've seen improvements from a customer service perspective in the way of reducing back orders and improving lead times, to the point of improving some of our quality metrics by being able to have data that we can then go back and really work with our suppliers. So we've seen reductions in material scrap. We've seen improvements in process quality. And that changes really the skill sets that's required to be successful. You move from, the person that's been able to be the hero, we had plenty of them as well, to someone that's more of an analytical skill set that can work with suppliers and partner and collaborate and look within and look at business processes as a way of correcting the issue. So yeah, it does create an opportunity for folks. And I think to the point that was raised earlier by Art, people have to reinvent themselves, and we have to reinvent ourselves to make sure that we're providing that education for people to be successful in kind of that new work environment.
You've heard us talk quite a bit about IT, OT convergence, and there's a technology convergence there between, call data, common networking, and the difference between, I guess, what I would call amplifying the operational data. Are you finding that you can extend that beyond the four walls of the factory? And are you seeing suppliers take up on that level of collaboration with you, and can they get there with you? I mean, some of you have extended supply chains, some of you are a little bit more immediate, but mean, what's the take up with your suppliers and the ability to extend outside of, your line or your immediacy of the four walls?
Sure. Well, we're in the real early stages of that. Certainly, from the standpoint of being able to meter products in and kind of just in time, we have those capabilities. But I think the data presents an opportunity for us to, problem solve, to really drive out value and drive out costs that's embedded in kind of both our organizations, our extended supply chain. And we're in the early stages of that, but I think there's a wonderful opportunity to leverage technology to do that.
Mm-hmm. And for us, it depends on who we're working with. So we work on the inbound side with companies like Cargill that are large and clearly have capability to connect. On the outbound side, we work with companies like Walmart that clearly have capabilities to connect. And so we do. Mm-hmm. And then we have mom and pop suppliers. We have global suppliers of ingredients that are specialized ingredients from all over the world that have very little capabilities. And so this spread is quite interesting. Sometimes about all we can do is send an email and get email information back. In other times, we actually have our systems connected.
Mm-hmm. Sure, and I can give another example of that, both one that's in practice and one that's evolving. We use a lot of bulk liquid material and have tank farms to accommodate that. Our first phase application, actually, at CPG, was in that tank farm area before we went into production, and it gave us views of our materials that we were astonished at how poorly we were actually managing that. So we were making adjustments on a daily basis, thousands of gallons of adjustments, not really sure where any of this material was actually ending up. And now our purchasing department has real-time views not only of what's being consumed and what's been consumed, but what will be consumed to the balance of the day. Then we work with those suppliers to schedule those deliveries. So what have we avoided? We've avoided demurrage charges. We've avoided overflows on tanks. We've avoided runouts. And we've avoided where we had to actually take incoming product and put it into other containers, which a lot of loss factor in that. It's gone away. It's absolutely gone away. On the other side, one of our major accounts is embark on a very long process of optimizing their ordering systems, tying into their marketing area for promotions, and going down to their store level, thousands and thousands of stores. And how does that information then migrate to a supplier? Well, through this automation now, they can get real-time views of what's happening with that inventory. Where are we at? And how can they take a look at us as a supplier and alternative suppliers, which don't have Rockwell systems right now, so we are a leg up. And how can they better manage their supply chain as a result of that?
Mm-hmm. So the automation not only benefits you from a pure P&L point of view, it also improves your competitiveness over others, and at the same time makes your suppliers better.
In that instance, absolutely, but there's many other instances as well that we've benefited from.
That shift he talks about is not a minor deal. I mean,
no.
to go from an accounting system that's ledger-driven to an accounting system that's actual-driven and plant floor-based is a major change. And we've gone through that. Well, we're still in that transition, but you think about from an accounting perspective, looking at month end, you're looking at balancing the books, you're looking at balancing the inventory status. You find out that people in the plant, specifically finance people in the plant, have to go out in the factory and reconcile inventory and do pluses and minuses, and you truly don't understand the state that you're in. When in fact, if you start leveraging MES and those types of technologies, and you start doing actual-driven, consumption-driven activities versus accounting-driven activities, it really changes and opens up a whole stream of business opportunities you haven't had before.
And that extends to purchasing, that extends to pricing, that extends to product development, that extends throughout the organization.
You totally know the cost to serve a particular customer versus an accounting-based agglomeration of information.
So you get into basically zero inventory management. At some point, you're manufacturing with no inventory on hand. It's purely just in time.
In the ideal world, yes. There's a migration here. Yes.
Go ahead, Lance.
No, I was just going to say, I think we spend less time, our associates spend less time tasking and more time problem solving. I think that's the key to leveraging the technology, and I think that's the where we have to provide the skills. But I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and I think people, once they make that migration, are much more pleased. They're much happier. They're much more satisfied, and they're driving greater value for our business. And I think that's the key.
I can just draw one analogy, and that is the people that we have working in our operations facilities, who you visited recently,
Yes.
are so jazzed about working with their systems that they become our best salespeople. So every customer visit we pull into one of our plants, these guys are really excited to get out in front of a customer and show them all of the cool things that they can do with the system. And in fact, they're going to be out on the show floor this week showing off in front of a larger crowd. They really have been motivated as a result of this connectivity that we've been able to bring together in this system. I think your folks have found the same thing.
We have, and no offense to your sales team, but they are, your ops folks are very compelling sales folks. They do a fabulous job, and we did have a chance to spend a day with your team, and I think that to me is really the sign of a true partner. And we've been in business for 113 years, and partnership is one of Andersen's core values. And one of the things that, from my perspective, what we saw in our partnership with you and your ops folks really exemplify it, is this desire to share and common understanding of solutions, to share best practices, to have common goals about what success looks like, and to kind of push us a bit. And I think when we hear your journey, 14 of 20 plants, I think, that have put in things like the Rockwell production system and Factory Talk production system, and we think about how you've done it in a matter of weeks, that's energizing for us, and I think a real marker for us. And I think it allows us to kind of say, what are the things that are different about our business, that it's more of a journey, and what are the things that we can do to really break down some of those barriers. And I think that was, again, very energizing for us, very compelling for us, and I think, again, a sign of what a partner does for one another.
I want to just kind of step back a little bit. I know when we chatted earlier, you had talked about Andersen growing up over a period of time through acquisition. And I think as we've done it ourselves, I know as General Mills has done it, as you grow through acquisition, you wind up with some decision points on facilities that you're acquiring, the technologies, the legacy technologies that are there, and where you think you want to go. And you've probably piloted, your best plant to optimize its performance. Let's talk a little bit about the process of synergy and incorporating acquired plants and legacy systems and upgrades into this new journey that you've decided to go on.
Sure. Well, maybe just a little context. Like many companies, we were changed greatly by the Great Recession. I was sharing with Jim this morning over a cup of coffee. The window and door industry, from peak to trough, saw a 60% reduction in overall demand. And so it changed the way we will all do business for the balance of our careers. But it's also made us more, I think, hungry, competitive, and with a real aspiration to continuously improve every day. We've also seen a migration to more make to order, highly configured products. And we'll make over 7 million unique parts in the course of a calendar year now. And that puts a lot of pressure on our supply chain, puts a lot of pressure on our operators, puts a lot of pressure on our entire organization to make sure that we have tools and business processes that can allow us to be successful to execute against what we call the perfect order, because that's what our customers should expect from us, and that's what we really strive to pursue and deliver every day. We have grown through acquisition. We have also gone through internal development. And when we acquire an organization, we acquire kind of that ecosystem of things, as Jim talked about, and we have that same thing. And what we've really worked hard to do over the last period of years is to make targeted investments and tie those investments to both quantifiable and qualifiable benefits. And so we look at things from the lens of our customer. We look at things from the lens of what a CFO would look at from a standpoint of good, dollars and cents, and make implementations based on that. And it is a journey, as has been talked about, but I think it's the classic sort of success begets success. And where we have success, and we can come back and share that with a very highly supportive executive committee that we have, we typically will get those investments. And the key is, execution, and the key is effectively measuring our progress. And we're very transparent about the things that went well and the things that we learned that we can make sure that we correct for the next implementation. We've got about 5 of our 15 manufacturing facilities that have the factory talk production system in, and that's about half of our volume. And now that we come out of the recovery and we're seeing growth, we'll start making those investments and using that process that I just described.
Mm-hmm. Great. I guess as we've kind of gone through this, there's a series of people, process, and technology movements that have to occur. The technology piece always seems to be one of these sticking points of compatibility, if you will, and living with information systems and operation systems that may or may not have common data models or common data exchange paths. Again, if you're acquiring plants or machines or lines, they may have a lot of legacy technology embedded in them. So do you have kind of like, if I want to take these one at a time, you've got a people issue around adoption of technology when you want to make that move, but there's also the technology move itself. So how do you guys view the technology migration of a legacy system versus if it's running, I'm going to leave it alone? And so it must be safe and it must be producing okay until you realize it's not. And so what's your approach to what I'll call the technology migration conundrum, and how do you future-proof and move ahead? And Jim, I know you've done quite a bit of work on this. Let's start with you.
We have. I don't know if our answer is that different or great than anybody else's. Back in 2001, we acquired a company the same size as General Mills, the Pillsbury Company. So at the time, General Mills was a $7 billion company, and Pillsbury was a $7 billion company. We acquired them. We converted all the systems to our standards. We converted all the factories to our standards. We acquired the Chex cereal and snack business from Ralston Purina. They had Modicon controllers in there. They had just bought new controllers and upgraded the plant. We worked with Rockwell to rip it out.
Thank you.
So that we could get the total cost of ownership was really what we're going after. So if you just took a look on the surface and said, what I have works, why touch it? It's because not touching it stops future improvements. And so we invested in getting to our standard control platform, getting to our standard networks, getting to our standard SAP technology. And if you look at how homogeneous we are as a global company, we are very, very homogeneous, even with all the puts and takes that go on. Now, that comes at a huge cost, a huge initial cost. So when we acquire a company, or the same when we divest a company, we now have to cleave those guys off and figure out what to do and how that works and so on. But we found that the gains of being standard, the gains of being on the similar technology is where we want to be.
I think we're, with the acquisition strategy we've had, we're not homogeneous, and we've come out of this very difficult time. We are making targeted investments. I think it's going to take us, a long time to get there, because I think we want to make sure that our investments are used wisely and that there are those business benefits that we can come back to. And so I think someday, and hopefully, we will get there. But I think for us, it's going to be a targeted journey, and I think that's okay. I think that's okay as long as we're making sure that that we have the right level of automation for our operations team to be successful. And what I want to make sure we don't do as a IT function is gold plate things, right? I mean, if we get to this, we're going to go across the enterprise, across our manufacturing facilities, and maybe gold-plated or kind of over-engineer this, we may not get the returns that our CFO would really expect us to. So I think that's our kind of our process, if you will, and maybe it's a little bit different, but I think it works for us, just like your strategy works for you, and I think that's a good thing, and that's probably what I'm sure other customers are wrestling with.
And for us, we're at this crossroads of, and we've got 60 factories across the globe, roughly. We're large enough that standards matter, and we're small enough to not want to apply them. Right? So you get this, how autonomous do I let people be? Yeah. And then you think about this people, process, technology kind of theory. People move throughout the organization. And so if you have one plant that's running this way with this set of technologies and these sets of processes, and then from a career development standpoint, they move either across the United States or across the globe to another one, and all of a sudden all the systems and processes are different. And then you're still underpinning that with your company values about this is how we approach things. And you go, man, this is a learning curve that is a train wreck.
Sure.
So when we're large enough to see that and go, man, we have to address that, and it's this ugly thing called standards and processes and, people, process, and technology. Yeah. And we're a company that wants to be more creative and innovative, but we're big enough that we've got to really drive towards homogeneous and standardization.
I think that last one is a good point. We didn't have the luxury of standardizing everybody on one system. We grew up through some acquisitions over many years, but we never moved them to one system because there was no one good system to move them to. So we ended up we were at end of life of all of the systems. And so we were forced to make the change. But at that point, it was clear that the way to do it was to standardize the processes and to allow the movement of people then would be much more seamless because they would understand how to work the systems. And Marty and his team did a great job of standardizing, but also moving people so they had experiences with the suppliers, they had experiences with the production managers, and they ran plants, and so they understood how the whole system worked, and we were able to then have a much more knowledgeable leadership team that was able to, when we now make an acquisition, absolutely, we now have a system we can put them on, and we can have confidence in that system as opposed to, well, which one of the 5 are we going to put them on? So we ended up having another one. Because there was no one good answer, because it is tough to move them. I mean, it's a lot of change, and if you're just doing it for change's sake as opposed to a better outcome, why are you going to do it? So today, the benefit to us is all the plant managers, they'll have a monthly meeting, but they're all talking the same language, they're all having the same dashboards, they're all reporting to the facts as opposed to, well, it was a tough month. We didn't get the orders or whatever, the parts didn't come in or whatever. You got to talk based upon the reality of what the data drove. And we now are sharing best practices, and the acceleration across the organization has picked up because of that. And our people have become much more mobile and therefore much more valuable because whether you run a small plant, it's different than running a large plant. It's different than having a ETO or a CTO or a build to stock business. So we want to be able to share those experiences and grow and develop people. The only way you can do that is if there's a knowledge and an insight that they have based upon their experiences, and now we're able to give them a much richer career development process because of what we've done.
Yeah, so with the standardization of the processes and adopting some new technology, the next phase of this would be to try to look for optimization at every level, right? And at some point you'd say, where might analytics play a role in this? So Keith spent a little bit of time talking about analytics, and the way I kind of view it is there's you could talk about big data across many big assets and, large cloud calculations and algorithms around big data sets, or you can just kind of work with what's in front of you. And today, I think most analytics are, involve having a man in the middle somewhere or a human in the middle. Do you see the point in the future where more of that becomes more available to you and creates a richer environment for those people to enrich the process? And do you see a point where that continues to optimize your manufacturing processes, or what are you hopeful for?
One of the things we're hopeful for is that we can start driving this information back into the source. And Jim and I talked about this. It's great that a financial analyst, a cost accountant, a CFO is getting a bunch of data. But by that time, the data is stale, and you want to get it right down to the source. So that comes back to some of the cultural issues, the training issues, the personnel issues. Do you have people who are in a position to be trained and to execute as things are happening? And that in itself is a journey. It reminds me, as a young accountant in public accounting, I got assigned to an extraordinarily large account. I was overwhelmed by the magnitude, and the partner said something to me that it just came to mind, because he said, "Son," he said, "all the companies are the same. Some have more zeros after the numbers than others." And I remember that, just hearing some of the stories here. We haven't done a $7 billion acquisition. I doubt in my lifetime that will ever even come close to happening. But when you talk about common language and using common data throughout the organization, we struggle with that too. One of the nice things that we've realized after the fact is we can take some of the tools that some of our various areas of the company have traditionally been using them and actually integrate those into CPG and make that part of that life. So there's a degree of familiarity, whether we're overlaying some SharePoint or some Microsoft products and things that they're familiar with, so they don't have to reinvent everything. But yet the platform is able to deal with that. So getting that common language so that we're all looking at the same data and now analyzing it as a team is proving to be a really results-driven type of application for us. We're seeing things that never had a home before, there was no area of responsibility. Now everybody's responsible, and things are bubbling to the surface that now we can address and become.
So if I could add to that, I guess my hope would be, and I saw Keith had a slide on this, that this topic of contextualization, that we actually figure out how to do that. Because you think about connected data, you think about our data sources, and you think about the problems that we're solving. There's very few problems that we have that's going to be solved by a single source. The solving a problem that can be solved by date, time, and value, and that's all is probably going to be very limited. There's all this other richness that's going to come. What line was it on? Who was working? What's the environment? What production order was this for? This set of information is what we're going to make decisions on as we move forward. And the richer the set, the better decisions that we can make. So this topic of contextualization when there's no context. So I have a tag historian that has date, time, and value, and I need now to merge that with all the rest of this richness so that the actions can be done in the speed of business. Mm-hmm. How do I do that? So I saw on the slide it said, contextualize, analyze, act. Mm-hmm. Absolutely spot on. Easier said than done because of all the different sources that we have.
Yeah.
John, if I could just add 2 points, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to use this data in a way coupled with our manufacturing process improvement methodology that allows our team to use some of the data, use some of the SPC analysis, use some of the tools and techniques that we've developed and educated them on so that they can go problem solve. I think that's point one. Point two is very similar to Jim's organization. I think we do a pretty good job within individual lines and individual functions at problem solving. I'd like to see us be able to use the data in a way that allows us to problem solve across our supply chain. That's probably obviously more on us than on you.
Sure.
But I think that data can enable that, because that's where I think some of our biggest opportunities lie, at least within our organization, and some of the biggest maybe difficulties we have in gaining traction to problem solve across. So I think that's probably what I'm hopeful for.
Mm-hmm. John, I'd be remiss too that if I didn't mention one of the byproducts that we've enjoyed in the early stages of this journey, we never focused on, never anticipated, was the sustainability piece. Mm-hmm. Our water usage is greatly reduced, our scrap process is down, our rework and disposal of that is great. What's getting washed out of our process is minimalized and continues to decrease. And we do, in one of the production areas, have integrated our CIP, so our cleaning processes, and what we found is virtually a 50% reduction in chemical use. That's huge.
That's great.
And it's important for us, not only as a company and a good citizen, but our customers use us as part of their scorecard, so it's important to them as well. Very important part of these systems.
Right, yeah, we touched on sustainability earlier. I'm glad you brought that back up. Yeah, the improvement in natural resource utilization, reduction in scrap, reduction in cost is an ultimate benefit to your bottom line. So look, we're about running out of time. I did want to offer up a question or two from the audience. So if we do have any questions, we've got mics standing in the middle here, so I'd invite any of the media from the audience, if you'd like to throw a question out to us. We're prepared. Any volunteers?
Go up. Come up to the microphone, and
Yeah, please
you'll
step
be
up.
able to ask your question.
Thank you. If it please the court, we heard much. Keith,
We have no lawyers up here.
That's a relief. No wonder you guys are making money. Keith, you talked about future-proofing, but then we heard a lot during the panel discussion of the journey you folks have been on and the surprises that you came across, and not necessarily aha moments, but more, it sounds more like uh-oh moments. So there seems to be a contradiction somewhere along here. Would you care to comment that
Sure.
and
Yeah.
make it simpler for a simple
Yep.
guy like me?
Okay. The definition of future-proofing is that you're able to adapt to what you learn as you go forward, and you don't have to change your underlying infrastructure or systems. What does that mean in simple English? Standard unmodified Ethernet, that's going to allow you to continue to make it extensible with whatever you learn, because that is your core network and your core infrastructure is going to be built upon that. If you're using that, whenever a new security fix comes in, you can automatically use it. You can apply it from your IT side to your plant floor. So future-proofing means you can take advantage of the next wave of technology, the next wave of innovation, as opposed to you have to rip and replace everything that you've done up to that point in time. Likewise, with a control platform like Logix, we continue to evolve that platform, and now we can do analytics, we can do model predictive control. It's the same system, the same software that you have been using, so it's extensible, and its ability to be added onto to take advantage of all the things that you now learn in the journey, as opposed to you pick something that was a dead end and now you can't take advantage of what comes in the future. So future-proofing only means that you're able to grow, and it grows with you at the pace that you want to evolve. You've heard multiple different stories here over a decade, a couple of years. I guarantee you, Jim has seen a lot of differences that have come along technically in that period of time, and he's had to be able to adapt and absorb that, and he didn't get more money to go back and change everything that he started with. So that's how we talk and think about future-proofing, the ability to take advantage of what's going to come, because we don't know what technology is going to be here in 10 years, and we don't know necessarily what problems each of our customers are going to be and where they are in their evolution of the connected enterprise. So we want to be able to allow them to progress at a rate that fits their environment, but also to leverage their previous investments. And I think that's, the manufacturing floor is not one that will change quickly simply because there's a new a new technology. So you have to help them evolve, and that's what we mean by future-proof. And I think everyone here talked about how they learned, and therefore what they're doing today is different than what they were doing previously, but they still have the same underlying approaches.
That's great, Keith. Stan, did you have another one back there?
Sorry, is this on? Oh, sorry.
It's on.
Just a quick question for Lance and Jim. Congratulations on adopting smart technologies. So my question is, our company have developed a unique process for using digital technology, particularly partnering with Rockwell to address the current assembly process. One of our challenge when we travel worldwide is finding leaders like you who are not afraid, who are the visionaries, who want to adapt new technologies globally. How do companies like ourselves, automation manufacturers, suppliers, really look for that kind of leadership? Is it a cultural thing, or is it something that is uniquely you guys?
Go ahead. You want to start? Well, for us, we, again, this is going to seem a little trite, but for us, if we can come back and talk about ways that we use this technology to enhance that customer experience from a service level perspective, if we can tie it back to the financial benefits we've talked a little bit about around quality, around conversion costs, around scrap reduction, coupled with the fact that I think it's going to be integral for us as we think about being competitive in kind of the years to come. Our industry's gone through a transformation. I mentioned it earlier, so I'm sorry to be repetitive, but our customers expect high quality products, highly configured items, and it's not possible for us to do things with paper-based production schedules. It's not possible to be able to integrate a supply chain that's all over North America without that technology. So for us, it was about taking the right kind of risks and making sure that you can stack the deck in a way that is tying the business investment to real value, to locations that are ready, that have leadership. I think that it's been talked a little bit about before, but I think leadership is critical. The only thing I would add to that, I think discipline is also really integral to our success. And I mean discipline around investments and a commitment to attacking the business process. If we lead with technology is going to solve all the issues, I don't think we're going to be as successful as tying kind of a commitment to having the right people, the right process, the right technology, and a good, effective communications plan that wraps all those things in a way that's executable. So.
Yeah, the only adds I would say was if you're going into another organization and you can't find that leader that embodies that, then you be the leader. And being that leader, I would say here's the attributes that you're looking for, whether it's the person that you're talking to at the company or you're going to be that leader. First of all, you have to be able to connect the dots. So if you're going to say, I have this wonderful mousetrap, I hope you buy it, that's not going to work. You need to connect the dots. And like Lance said, basically speak in the terms of the business. So the CEO of the company, the CIO, CFO, whatever the C is, they have a strategy. And those folks that have the strategy might not know how to connect all the dots to achieve it. That's what they're asking us and you to do. So if you can't connect the dots, find someone that can. The second thing that I would say is you have to have credibility. So at the end of the day, a lot of these investments and a lot of these strategic directions, it's a bet. You know, and you can probably have a discussion with Keith about how many bets he's made in his life that they weren't necessarily proven financial decisions. It was a feel, it was a gut reaction, it was a bet that we're making that this is the right decision to make. Those bets are based on people that have credibility over time. Find those people, and again, if you can't find them in the organization, then you be that person. And at the end of the day, I would say the last thing to close that leadership loop is to do what you said you're going to do. So it's one thing to talk about, yeah, I know how to connect the dots, and yeah, people believe me, but then do it. And so, you know, there was an old IBM commercial that the consultant came forward to the CEO and said, here's what I think you should do. And then the CEO finally said, I'd like you to do that. And they said, oh, I'm sorry, we just consult. At the end of the day, especially in manufacturing, where you get credibility and where you can connect the dots is where actually you can achieve what you said you're going to do. And that opens the door for more of those things. And so we talked briefly about this cycle of how you actually accelerate deployment, and that is having success. Doing what you said you were going to do, and then you keep building on it. And like Art said, you're going to learn new things, and you're going to get a little bit more rope. The CFO or CEO is going to say, you know what, you didn't screw up too bad last time, so let's keep doing more of this, and good things will happen.
That's a great ending point, and I guess we're going to have to adjourn for a break right now. And before we go, I'd like to thank Keith and the rest of you gentlemen for a great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They'll all be around for the bulk of the morning here if you have some questions on the side you'd like to ask. And I think we're due for about a 15 to 20 minute break. Listen for the startup chime, and then we'll start up with our next panel. Okay? Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.